Hello everyone, so I'm continuing with my discussion of Bitcoin. Just to recap a bit, last time I talked about, it's called Bitcoin 1 of 2. What is Bitcoin 1 of 2? Last time I talked a bit about what money actually is and how Bitcoin works, and some reasons why we might be interested in it. And today I'd like to go into a bit more technical side of Bitcoin. Not that I'm really very good at sort of computer technology, but I understand quite a lot of the technical side, and also just finish up with some of the talking about why it's important as a technology. So let's start there. So as I was saying in the previous video, you can't just imprison Mr. Bitcoin and Mrs. Bitcoin. There isn't such a person. There's no company, there's no Bitcoin Inc. and there's no Bitcoin Limited that you can that a government or an international organisation can put pressure on or close down, as they have done in the past with electronic currency companies. They've closed them down. And but with Bitcoin, it's actually a peer-to-peer technology, much like Napster or BitTorrent, these kind of things. In fact, if anything, it's even more peer-to-peer, and it's been designed from the ground up to be resilient to attack from all sorts of potential attackers. And basically Bitcoin has come about from the hacker community in some senses, as a similar community that WikiLeaks and various other open source type organisations have come from, like the GNU open source movement. That basically open source is software that is free, and the code that makes that software work is open to anybody to see. And in general what happens is there's a mechanism by which people can create new programs and work together to modify them and improve them over time. And one of the most famous open source software that people might have heard of is Firefox, which is a browser which was originally started to compete with Windows Explorer, Windows Internet Explorer, and because at the time it pretty much had all the market. There was a couple of other ones, Netscape, I don't know if you remember Netscape. And they were closely related, I believe, Netscape and Firefox. And so in a way Firefox took over for where Netscape left off, I think. But anyway, that's open source. Linux is an operating system that's open source. And OpenOffice is a competitor for Microsoft's Office suite, so you might think Microsoft are in the crosshairs for the open source community. I can't imagine why. But yeah, so open source, hacking, free information, probably at some extreme anarchists, and all in between. You may have heard of Anonymous, which is also a group which I suppose you could say is the WikiLeaks, the extreme end, where they go out and they They hack into systems and publish the data on the internet, often causing quite a lot of mayhem and damage to the people involved. And personally, I think it's normally justified, and they're quite clever about what they do. With such a secretive organisation like that, it's hard to tell exactly what's going on behind the scenes. But anyway, so this is the kind of background from which Bitcoins come from. I mean, these are people who understand computers, understand the system, the financial system, particularly as it stands now. And I've recommended and linked a film in the previous video called Money as Debt. I'll mention it again now. I think it's a brilliant film, and it really explains about money and how it works in our modern society, and how it's actually created as a debt, and a debt which doesn't have any way to be repaid initially, though because of inflation and the expansion of the economy, eventually you should in theory be able to repay all the debts. But we all know what happens when the economy stops expanding and even starts contracting. So this is the background they're coming from. Computers, a lot of suspicion about the system as it currently stands. You know, the truth movement, 9/11 truth and JFK truth, and you know, there's hundreds of them. This is the background these people have come from. A lot of the people who are involved in Bitcoin. And but the original sort of starting point for it was, I suppose you could say, most people trace it back to a famous white paper, an academic paper, written by someone who called themselves Satoshi Nakamoto, which apparently is like calling yourself John Brown in English in Japan. And so this person published a paper where they outlined how you can have transactions that function automatically and don't need what's called third-party trust. So you don't need a third party to make sure the transaction works with Bitcoin. You don't need a trusted third party like a bank or a government, if you did trust those. So, and most of us do for our everyday things, surely. So he wrote out this paper and putting forward this idea for a way to transfer value without the need for any third party to be involved. Just the person who's sending and the person who's receiving the value. And the main reason for this, of course, is at any point where you've got an authority figure, there you've got chance for corruption, you've got chance for manipulation, you've got chance for political pressure. If you've got an individual, if you've got an organisation, that's the weak point that's always been the weak point in all the previous attempts at a digital currency that was independent of government money. So finally this guy cracked it, basically. And regardless of what you think about Bitcoin and the future of Bitcoin itself, what has definitely happened is that cryptocurrencies, as Satoshi Nakamoto described, are here and they're here to stay. As long as there's an internet and as long as there's reasonable societal freedom, they're here to stay. And they're going to play a massive role in this world of ours over the next say 5 to 50 years at least, they're going to change this world. They're going to change so much about this world. And what a lot of people don't realise is that this technology doesn't just apply to putting Western Union out of business, yeah, or putting PayPal out of business, or more likely with PayPal moving them into the Bitcoin business. What this also can be applied to is almost any financial transaction. So you can actually set up a completely automated marketplace using Bitcoin. And this is because of the nature of Bitcoin. It's not like, again, it's in another way, it's not like any other money that's ever been this widely used, or this, you know, brought out into the public like this. It's smart money. It's essentially a computer program, yeah. So it can do smart things that money normally can't do. Like, you can send it to somebody and it'll automatically come back to you at a later date. Now, obviously, you know, that's all open. Everyone can see that fact about the coin. Everything is open, you see, in Bitcoin. So it's not like you could fool someone and pay them and then suddenly come back to you. Yeah, it has to be done by both parties so it'll work. But it can be done, again, in a way that doesn't require any oversight, doesn't require somebody to guarantee that that transaction is going to work like that. It'll happen automatically. The Bitcoin will go to the one person, stay with them for however long, and then come back. And obviously that's what's called a loan. It could also be used for lots of other sorts of things, financial transactions. But basically you can replace the stock market, you can replace nearly all the functions of a bank, you can replace you know, investment banks, share dealers. I mean, you can pretty much cut the sort of 50% right off the top of the middle management of the whole of the Western world. So now this is longer term, but this technology can be used in ways that people haven't quite even begun to realise yet. Very, very few people have realised some of the things that it can do. It can basically bring the powerless, or the relatively powerless in society, together in a way where they can bring that small amount of power they each have to bear together on something they want to. And this is an idea that I think other people have come up with, but me and my friend came up with it as well, called Justice Coin. And there is a post on Reddit that may still be there and may be able to be read on the Bitcoin forum at Reddit that describes how Justice Coin works. But basically, there's some people with ideas for how this can be used that are just amazing. So this technology isn't just going to change money, and it's not just going to change stock markets and banking, and it's potentially going to change a lot of what we do. So this is where it's going, and well, you know, this is, on the one hand, there's some great opportunities, gigantic opportunities for the world, and there's also some risks, and particularly I sometimes think about these science fiction scenarios where computers kind of taking over the world. I mean, in a way, this is a lot of the world that we're talking about, that this kind of technology could be influencing but I think I'm the sort of person that tends to think, well, you can't really stop technology's progress. The best thing you can do really is to understand it as far as you can, and then try to influence the direction it's going in. So that's my take on that question. And so this is some of the background to where it's coming from and where it could be going to, Bitcoin technology and this kind of technology, which technically is called the blockchain. So just to get into a little bit more of the technical side, the blockchain is kind of like a chain of transactions, and it's basically a history of every transaction that's ever happened, and this history is agreed on by this network of computers, as I talked about in the previous video. So this creates a sort of chain of events, and one that you can use for all sorts of information storage, information sharing. There is a messaging application that's based on the blockchain or on Bitcoin technology. And this is very highly secure and independent of email companies, web email companies, or the whole email protocol that Microsoft Outlook uses and so on. It's fully encrypted, like most of Bitcoin is, most of their technology is, with the highest level of encryption that's publicly available, and very strong encryption actually. There is a application that uses the blockchain technology to essentially create a separate domain name system. So at the moment, when you type in a domain name like yahoo.com into your browser and hit enter, what happens is the browser requests the full address on the internet, which is a kind of long number, from a server in America normally. And that server says, oh, you want yahoo.com, then you want 11344, and it says it in computer language to your computer, and then your computer knows where to send all the requests. And so it's got the address then. Well, Namecoin is based on Bitcoin technology, and it is designed to be able to replace that function of these servers in America, which is obviously, I'm talking about a community who understand the internet, understand computers, and understand that that server is a weak point in the network, is a point which can be influenced by a potentially corrupt government or a totalitarian government. They could actually just reprogram that one or two servers, whatever it is, and tell it, right, that domain name just doesn't exist anymore, or that domain name, wikileaks.com, just send it straight to the CIA main page or something like that. And it's possible to do that at the moment. Fortunately, it's politically impossible to do it at the moment, but who knows in the future. Well, Namecoin is designed to provide a backup system, I suppose, or a separate system. So as long as the internet was still working, Namecoin would still function just like Bitcoin, just like BitMessage, which is a messaging protocol I was talking about. So there's many applications for this technology, and they're already being made. And there's many cryptocurrencies, as they're called, or similar to Bitcoin. There's Litecoin. I mentioned Namecoin. It's kind of a cryptocurrency with a very specialised purpose. Litecoin is designed to be like silver to Bitcoin gold, to put it in a nutshell, and it's very much based on the same technology and done by the same people. And well, there's hundreds of them now. So that's a bit more into the technical side. I'll probably be doing more videos about Bitcoin at some point. So if you're wondering whether you should try and get into mining yourself, have a little search on YouTube for mining rigs. They're called, like oil rigs, mining rigs. Have a little search on there, you'll see the sort of technology that's involved now. Massive great banks of computers, yeah. So you need quite a large investment of cash these days to get into Bitcoin mining. Or you can imagine some of these people have made, big Bitcoin miners have made a lot of money over the last sort of 3 or 4 years, so they've been able to afford to invest in some pretty high-tech stuff. And recently I heard that the computing power of the entire Bitcoin network, which is hundreds of thousands of computers linked together in this way, the entire power that represents is 250 times more than the top 500 supercomputers in the world added together. So there you go, there's a beautiful demonstration of the power of the people working together, and where they have the technology to bring them together and to bring their power to bear. And these elite supercomputers are just little toys, really. Okay, well, thank you very much for watching, and hope you enjoyed it, and see you again. Bye bye.